The philosophical path. Mental rigidity and over-attachment to viewpoints. When certainty becomes a cage. How yielding opens the door to wisdom. There's a quiet kind of suffering that rarely shows on the surface. The tension of the mind that refuses to bend. It's the exhaustion that comes from needing to be right, from defending every opinion as if the self depends on it. Most people don't notice when rigidity begins to harden their thinking. It happens slowly, a certainty here, a resentment there, a habit of judging before listening. The mind builds walls to feel safe, but soon those walls become a prison. What begins as conviction ends as confinement. The Taoist sages understood this deeply. They observed that when water hardens into ice, it loses the ability to flow. The same is true of the mind. The moment it freezes around a viewpoint, it stops learning. The prison of I know. The most dangerous phrase in growth is, I already know that. The moment we say it, the door to new understanding closes. In martial arts, the beginner who listens learns faster than the master who assumes. The same applies to life. When you cling to being right, you stop being real. Rigidity shows up in countless ways, in arguments that go nowhere, in overreacting when someone challenges us, in resisting new methods because they threaten old identities. The paradox is that the harder we grip our ideas, the more fragile we become. Like a rigid branch in the wind, we snap where we could have bent. The river and the stone. There's an old Taoist story about a monk who meditated beside a river every day. One morning, he noticed a small stone lodged in the stream. The current hit it directly, splitting the water into two sharp sprays. Day after day, the stone remained, eroding slowly. The monk realized he was watching the story of the human mind, the river representing life, the stone representing opinion. The water never fought the stone, it simply flowed around it. Over time, the stone grew smooth, then disappeared. Rigidity resists life, yielding refines it. Why the mind clings. Before we learn to yield mentally, we must understand why the mind clings at all. The mind's job is to predict, label, and control. It wants certainty because certainty feels safe. Every viewpoint, political, spiritual, personal, becomes a fence meant to protect identity. But when the fence becomes too tight, it cuts off the view. We begin to mistake familiarity for truth. Meditative practice dismantles this illusion. It trains awareness to see thoughts as events, not facts. Opinions become clouds, visible, moving, impermanent. The more you observe the mind, the more you realize how often it builds conclusions from emotion, not evidence. This realization isn't humiliating, it's liberating. You stop needing to defend every thought because you see them for what they are, passing weather in the sky of consciousness. Emotional reactivity, the bodyguard of belief. Rigidity and emotion are inseparable. The moment someone threatens a cherished belief, adrenaline surges. The nervous system treats disagreement like danger. This is why arguments escalate so fast, not because of reason, but because of chemistry. Meditative philosophy trains you to pause between stimulus and reaction. That pause is the difference between responding with wisdom or lashing out from fear. When you regulate your breath and center your body, the emotional charge dissolves. Suddenly, what felt like an attack becomes an invitation to understand. This is how clarity begins, not by conquering emotion, but by breathing through it until it softens. The power of yielding awareness. Yielding awareness means being flexible without being passive. It's not agreement with everything. It's the ability to stay open while discerning truth. Imagine being in a debate where, instead of defending your side, you listen fully. You feel the other person's energy, tone, and intent. You allow their words to pass through your awareness without taking them personally. In that stillness, something remarkable happens. You begin to see not just their point of view, but the whole field that both of you stand within. This is the shift from ego to essence, from protecting a position to perceiving reality. The Tao Te Ching says, "The soft overcomes the hard, the yielding overcomes the rigid." In practice, this means the mind that can yield is stronger than the one that insists. The moment you stop fighting to be right, you begin to see what's true. The mirror of conflict. Every conflict is a mirror showing where we're still rigid. When someone's words make you tense, it's not about them. It's a signal that your viewpoint has turned into identity. Instead of resisting, you can ask, what part of me needs to be right? What fear am I protecting? That question turns conflict into practice. It shifts focus from blame to awareness. When you approach disagreement this way, you no longer waste energy on defending the self. You use it to discover the self. The warrior and the wind. A story is told of a general who studied under a Taoist master. The general was famous for his temper. He believed strength came from dominance. One day, after a humiliating defeat, he visited the master and demanded to be taught the secret of invincibility. The master led him to a mountain ridge where a fierce wind blew. He pointed to two trees, one tall and rigid, snapping under the gusts, the other flexible, bending gracefully and returning upright after each burst. "Which tree is stronger?" the master asked. The general watched in silence. When the storm passed, only the bending tree still stood. The master smiled. "Now you understand. True strength is the ability to yield without breaking." In that moment, the general grasped the principle that had eluded him his entire career: control without rigidity, command without resistance. The mind that yields becomes unbreakable. The science of flexibility. Modern neuroscience echoes these teachings. Studies show that rigid thinking patterns correlate with increased stress, inflammation, and reactivity in the brain. Cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift perspective, enhances creativity, resilience, and emotional intelligence. Meditative practices strengthen this flexibility by activating regions of the brain associated with empathy and perspective taking, while quieting the fear-driven amygdala. In simple terms, awareness literally rewires the brain for openness. This is why daily practice is not just philosophical, it's physiological. Every moment of stillness trains the nervous system to relax its grip on certainty. Over time, adaptability becomes your natural state, seeing through many eyes. A flexible mind doesn't abandon truth, it expands it. When you yield, you see through multiple lenses: the personal, how it feels to you; the interpersonal, how it feels to others; the universal, what truth remains when emotion fades. This layered awareness makes you wiser, not weaker. It allows you to navigate complexity without panic, to understand paradox without paralysis. Philosophical training through meditation and reflection develops this multi-perspective vision. You start noticing how every viewpoint, including your own, contains both clarity and limitation. This humility is not self-doubt, it's self-awareness. It turns conversation into collaboration instead of combat. From knowing to understanding. There's a profound difference between knowing something intellectually and understanding it experientially. Knowing says, I can explain it. Understanding says, I can embody it. Meditation bridges that gap. It turns abstract wisdom into living awareness. When you feel impermanence in your breath, you stop clinging to outcomes. When you experience interconnection in stillness, judgment dissolves. When you realize the fluid nature of thought, flexibility becomes effortless. This is why the sages taught through paradox, not to confuse, but to awaken direct perception. Paradox invites the mind to stretch beyond logic and touch truth through experience, yielding as the path to clarity. When the mind yields, confusion clears, not because you gain more information, but because you stop distorting what's already there. Imagine looking into muddy water. The more you stir it trying to see, the cloudier it becomes. When you stop moving, the water clears on its own. Meditative awareness is that stillness. It allows wisdom, which was always present, to reveal itself naturally. Clarity doesn't come from effort, it comes from alignment. Wisdom beyond reaction. Reaction is reflex. Wisdom is response. Reaction is fast, fueled by emotion and habit. Wisdom is slow, rooted in awareness and principle. The gap between the two is training. Every time you pause before reacting, in a conversation, a challenge, or an internal dialogue, you are practicing the art of wisdom. Over time, you begin to notice. Wisdom isn't something you acquire. It's what remains when the noise of reactivity fades. In that silence, decisions become clear, relationships deepen, and creativity awakens. The gift of the flexible mind. A flexible mind doesn't need to win. It seeks to understand. It doesn't resist change. It adapts to it. It doesn't cling to identity. It evolves through it. This is the heart of Taoist philosophy, harmony through responsiveness. In a rigid world, flexibility becomes revolutionary. It allows you to move through uncertainty without fear and to meet opposing views without hostility. You stop being tossed by life and start flowing with it. Closing reflection. Rigidity is the armor of fear. It keeps you safe, but it also keeps you small. The philosophical path teaches that wisdom isn't about gathering more ideas. It's about loosening your grip on them. It's about meeting each moment as new, allowing truth to reveal itself again and again. When you yield mentally, you don't lose strength. You gain perspective. When you release the need to be right, you gain the freedom to grow. When you stop clinging to certainty, clarity rises like calm water settling after a storm. This is the first gift of the philosophical path, the liberation of the mind from its own walls, the rediscovery of fluid awareness, and the understanding that truth is not a possession. It's a relationship you return to every time you yield.
Before we continue, I'd love to hear what you think about this concept so far. Don't forget to drop a comment below or let me know if there's a specific meditative topic or principle you'd like me to cover in a future video.
The philosophical path, lack of direction or deeper meaning, returning to the flow of purpose. There's a moment that arrives quietly in many people's lives, often after they've already accomplished what they thought would make them happy. The career is stable, the house is full, the calendar is packed, and yet when the noise settles, a question lingers beneath the surface. Is this all there is? It's not despair, it's dissonance. The outer life is full, but the inner life feels hollow. The rhythm of doing has drowned out the melody of being. This is the second pain of the philosophical path, not the pain of failure, but the ache of success without spirit, the weight of achievement. In our culture, motion is mistaken for meaning. We measure worth by productivity, not peace, by accumulation, not alignment. People climb ladders without asking where they're leaning. At first, the pursuit feels noble, goals, growth, progress. But when the striving never stops, even victory starts to taste like exhaustion. The athlete who's mastered the game feels restless off the field. The entrepreneur who built the empire feels strangely disconnected from it. The parent or teacher who gives everything to others wonders when it will feel like enough. This is not failure, it's awakening. The soul begins to hunger for something subtler, coherence, connection, inner purpose. When action loses direction, even success becomes suffering. Doing without being. The Taoist sages warned against this thousands of years ago. They saw how human beings could become lost in activity, doing without being. They called it living on the surface, where effort replaces awareness and noise replaces presence. When you live only in doing, you lose touch with the inner current that gives those actions meaning. You become efficient, but empty, busy, but directionless. It's like rowing a boat at full speed without noticing the current beneath it. You move fast, but not necessarily forward. Meditative reflection slows you down just enough to feel that current again. It teaches you to act from awareness instead of anxiety, to move in rhythm with life rather than in resistance to it. The search for meaning. Modern psychology calls it the existential gap, that sense that something's missing even when everything looks complete. But the Tao calls it something simpler: separation from the way. The way, or Tao, is the natural order of things. It's the intelligence that makes rivers flow, seasons turn, and hearts beat without our command. When we live in harmony with it, life feels meaningful, not because we've accomplished something grand, but because we're aligned with the pulse of reality itself. Meaning isn't found by adding more to life. It's revealed by subtracting what obscures it. The philosopher Lao Tzu said, "In pursuit of knowledge, every day something is gained. In pursuit of Tao, every day something is lost." To rediscover meaning, we stop accumulating and start attuning. The exhaustion of constant striving. When there's no inner compass, the mind seeks validation through busyness. You may notice the symptoms: a sense of restlessness when you're not achieving, guilt when you rest as if peace must be earned, constant comparison to others who seem ahead. This is the illusion of direction, motion mistaken for purpose. Meditative philosophy invites you to pause and ask, where is this movement coming from? Is it driven by fear of stillness or guided by clarity of purpose? When action is born from insecurity, it drains energy. When it's born from alignment, it generates energy. The difference is not in the activity, it's in the awareness behind it. Reconnecting to the source. When you study the Tao, you begin to see that meaning is not something you create, it's something you uncover. It's the quiet knowing beneath the noise, the still awareness beneath all movement. Meditative reflection trains you to listen for this undercurrent. You sit, breathe, observe, and gradually notice a presence that was there all along. Spacious, calm, knowing. That presence is your connection to the Tao, the part of you that moves with, not against, life's natural flow. When you reconnect with it, direction becomes intuitive. You stop forcing outcomes and start following alignment. This is what the sages meant by Wu Wei, effortless action. Not inaction, but action arising from harmony. Values as compass. When meaning fades, it's often because values have become buried beneath habits. You start doing things because you've always done them, not because they express who you are. Philosophical reflection asks you to return to essence, to question not what you do, but why you do it. Ask yourself, what feels deeply right when all outer noise fades? What energizes rather than depletes me? What would I do if no one were watching? As you answer honestly, you start to sense your true direction. It's rarely loud. It's subtle intuitive, familiar, like a compass pointing toward home. Aligning with those values doesn't require drastic change. It requires daily remembrance. The more often you return to that inner compass, the less you're pulled by comparison, competition, or external validation. The mirror of the mountain. There's a parable about a scholar who spent decades studying philosophy and scripture. Despite his knowledge, he felt unfulfilled. One day he climbed a mountain hoping for clarity. When he reached the summit, he found only silence. Frustrated, he shouted into the valley, "What is the meaning of life?" The mountain echoed back, "Life, life, life." In that moment, he understood. The answer wasn't hidden in books or theories. It was in the experience of being alive, of hearing the wind, feeling the earth, breathing the air. Meaning isn't discovered in thought. It's embodied in awareness. The mountain had no philosophy, and that was the wisdom. Alignment. When doing and being unite. When your actions and awareness reunite, life regains its depth. You begin to work, create, and move, not from emptiness, but from connection. This alignment feels like quiet power. You no longer chase meaning, you carry it. Every task, from teaching to training to conversation, becomes infused with presence. In Taoist philosophy, this is called the meeting of heaven and earth within the human being. Heaven represents inspiration and spirit. Earth represents practicality and groundedness. When they meet in balance, life flows effortlessly. This state can't be faked. It arises naturally when your inner rhythm matches the rhythm of what you're doing. You become less concerned with success and more interested in sincerity. Paradoxically, this sincerity makes your work more powerful, your relationships more real, and your path more sustainable. Living with effortless precision, precision without force, that's the hallmark of living in alignment. It's not laziness, it's mastery. The archer who aims from stillness hits the target with half the effort. The speaker who speaks from presence says less but means more. The leader who acts from alignment leads without coercion. This is the fruit of philosophical training. It refines awareness until every action becomes deliberate, not reactive. You waste no energy on friction because you've stopped fighting the flow. Lao Tzu wrote, "The sage does nothing, yet nothing is left undone." To the untrained mind, this sounds impossible, but to those who've touched deep awareness, it's the most natural truth in the world. When you move from alignment, you discover that nature itself supports your direction. The paradox of purpose. Purpose isn't found through striving. It's revealed through surrender. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What wants to move through me?" This is not passive. It's participatory. You become a collaborator with life. You listen, yield, and act when moved by clarity instead of compulsion. The result is a life that feels guided rather than forced, where events seem to unfold with an almost uncanny timing. Synchronicities appear, opportunities align, relationships deepen. This is the lived experience of Tao, meaning arising from movement in harmony with the whole. Rewriting the definition of success. True success is not how much you accumulate, but how little you need to force. It's not about reaching higher peaks. It's about finding peace at every elevation. When your actions align with your inner truth, satisfaction replaces striving. You begin to notice beauty in simplicity, depth in quiet, wealth in time. You stop chasing meaning outside yourself because you realize it was never lost, only buried beneath noise. The philosopher Alan Watts once said, "You're under no obligation to be the person you were 5 minutes ago." Meditative awareness makes that freedom real. Each breath becomes a reset, a chance to return to being before doing. The balance of insight and effort. To live meaningfully, effort and insight must dance together. Too much effort without reflection creates burnout. Too much reflection without action creates stagnation. The philosophical path teaches this balance, the middle way between control and surrender, intention and spontaneity. You plan, but you don't obsess. You move, but you don't force. You trust, but you remain attentive. This dynamic harmony, responsive yet relaxed, is what the Taoists called living in the flow. It's the art of participation without interference. Rediscovering wonder. When meaning returns, so does wonder. You begin to notice things you once ignored. The rhythm of your breath, the way light falls through trees, the way silence feels alive. Wonder is the byproduct of awareness. It's how the universe rewards attention. When you live from meaning, every ordinary act becomes sacred. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Teaching becomes transmission. Movement becomes prayer. You realize that purpose was never a destination. It was presence all along. Closing reflection. The lack of direction or deeper meaning is not a flaw. It's a summons. It's life asking you to slow down, listen, and remember. You've mastered doing. Now it's time to remember being. When you study the Tao, when you sit in stillness, when you align values with action, something begins to shift quietly inside you. Confusion gives way to clarity. Effort gives way to ease. Force gives way to flow. Meaning is not found by adding more to your life. It's revealed when you begin subtracting what isn't true. This is the second gift of the philosophical path, the return to inner purpose, the awakening of effortless precision, and the realization that fulfillment isn't something you chase. It's something you remember when you yield.
By the way, what do you think about these concepts so far? If you're ready to master the meditative arts, sign up for the Yielding Warrior membership at the link in the description. I'll teach you how to integrate these concepts into your daily life with guided practices, meditations, and lessons designed to help you master the art of yielding. Back to the video.
The philosophical path. Poor strategic awareness in relationships or leadership. Awakening the inner general, perceiving before you act. Most people move through relationships and leadership like they're in a fog of urgency. They react before they see. They answer before they understand. They fight fires instead of studying the weather that caused them. They're good at doing, but not at seeing. When you can't see patterns behind behavior, you end up reacting to people instead of relating to principles. You chase surface conflicts rather than sensing the undercurrent of energy that created them. You try to fix moments instead of mastering timing. Taoist philosophy calls this blindness, living at the tip of the spear. You keep stabbing forward without realizing where the thrust is aimed. The philosophical path trains a different approach. Step back, slow down, and observe before moving. It awakens what the ancients called the inner general, the calm strategist who governs emotion, perceives the field, and acts with precision rather than impulse. Seeing without reacting. In martial arts, the beginner focuses on strikes. The master focuses on spacing. The beginner tries to win through movement. The master wins through perception. Leadership and relationships follow the same principle. Most people try to fix outcomes through force, more talking, more convincing, more control. But wise leadership begins with awareness. When you see the rhythm behind events, you can move at the right time with the least effort. That's strategy in its purest form. Meditative observation cultivates this vision. You learn to pause before responding, to feel energy before labeling it, to sense when a conversation is open and when it's closed. The pause becomes your power. Between stimulus and response lies the leader's advantage. Emotional turbulence and strategic blindness, reactivity clouds perception. The more emotional you become, the narrower your vision gets. Neuroscience calls this amygdala hijack, the limbic system overriding rational insight. Taoists described it centuries earlier. When the heart is disturbed, the mirror cannot reflect. Imagine trying to see your reflection in stormy water. The more you splash, the less you see. Meditative training teaches you to still the surface. When emotion settles, reflection returns. You stop reacting to the waves and start reading the tides. This is why meditation is the foundation of strategy, because clarity precedes correct action. The neutral mind, power without polarity. The neutral mind is not cold or detached. It's centered. It doesn't suppress emotion. It integrates it. In relationships, neutrality lets you hear what's really being said instead of defending what you wish were said. In leadership, neutrality allows you to weigh all sides before committing resources or words. The neutral mind observes patterns objectively. Where is energy building? What emotion is driving this behavior? What's the timing of this moment? Is it for action or patience? From this stance, decisions emerge naturally, almost effortlessly. What once felt like intuition is actually cultivated awareness, perception, trained to move without interference. The inner general. The Taoists saw the human spirit as a kingdom, the body as the land, the emotions as the citizens, and the mind as the general. When the general is rash, chaos reigns. When the general is hesitant, opportunity fades. But when the general observes calmly, the kingdom prospers. To awaken the inner general is to unify awareness and timing. It's learning to act at the right moment rather than the convenient one. In relationships, this means knowing when to speak and when to listen. In leadership, it means sensing when to advance and when to yield. Strategy, in this sense, isn't manipulation. It's mindfulness applied to movement. The archer's lesson. There's an ancient tale of an archer who trained obsessively for accuracy. He practiced day and night until he could split an arrow in half. Yet in battle, his aim faltered. He sought advice from an old hermit who watched him shoot. Your technique is flawless, said the hermit, but your heart trembles. You aim at victory, not at truth. The archer realized his mind was fixed on outcomes, not observation. He couldn't see the wind because he was focused on the target. When he learned to still his mind, to feel rather than force, his arrows found their mark again. The same applies to leadership. When you release fixation on results and focus on rhythm, accuracy returns. The field beyond conflict. Every disagreement with a colleague, a partner, or an inner doubt creates an energetic field. Most people charge straight into that field, like soldiers into battle. The wise leader studies it first. They ask, what's really being sought here? Validation, fear, respect, relief? Where is the hidden alignment between our goals? What happens if I say nothing right now? Strategic awareness means seeing beneath words to the energy beneath them. Often, the smartest move is stillness. When one side stops resisting, the whole field reorganizes. This is why the Taoist strategist wins without fighting, not through cunning, but through comprehension, perception, and timing. The difference between mistake and mastery is often timing. You may have the right idea, but act too soon, or the right intention, but act too late. Meditative observation trains sensitivity to timing. You start feeling when conditions are ripe, like a farmer who knows the moment before rain. In conversation, you sense when a person is ready to hear truth. In business, you sense when the market is opening or contracting. In self-work, you know when to rest or press forward. This rhythm is not intellectual, it's felt. The body becomes an instrument tuned to the Tao, leadership through presence. True leadership has less to do with authority and more to do with resonance. People follow calm because calm feels like safety. When you embody presence, breathing slowly, standing with awareness, speaking deliberately, you create coherence. Others attune to that steadiness unconsciously. This is why the most powerful leaders and teachers often speak softly. They don't need to raise their voice because their energy carries conviction. Presence communicates before words begin. Strategy in relationships. Strategic awareness in relationships isn't manipulation. It's mindfulness expressed as empathy. You stop trying to win and start trying to understand. You recognize that timing matters more than truth shouted at the wrong moment. You learn to see behavior as communication rather than conflict. When someone reacts defensively, you sense the fear beneath their tone. When tension rises, you adjust your own energy instead of matching theirs. This is energetic Aikido, redirecting rather than resisting. The result is influence without force, the mirror of the other. Every relationship reveals your level of awareness. The traits that irritate you in others often point to the rigidity you haven't yet released in yourself. When you meet someone reactive, impatient, or closed-minded, you have two choices: mirror them or observe them. If you mirror them, conflict escalates. If you observe, understanding expands. The neutral mind uses every interaction as training. Each encounter becomes a mirror polishing your clarity. Over time, this practice builds what Taoists called Te, the virtue of presence that influences without coercion. Strategic compassion. The highest strategy is compassion, informed by awareness. Compassion without wisdom becomes enabling. Wisdom without compassion becomes cold. Together, they create balance, strength guided by understanding. In leadership, this looks like firm boundaries with kind delivery. In relationships, it looks like honesty spoken with timing and tone that invite openness rather than defense. Strategic compassion turns confrontation into transformation. It's not softness, it's surgical precision guided by heart. From control to influence. When you see deeply, you no longer need to control outcomes. Influence replaces coercion. You stop micromanaging because you trust process. You stop over-talking because you understand rhythm. You stop reacting to others' moods because you lead from principle, not preference. This is how leadership becomes peaceful. The inner general no longer wastes troops on unnecessary battles. Energy is conserved, direction is clear, and decisions emerge naturally. Sharpening intuition. Intuition isn't mystical. It's awareness moving faster than thought. Through meditation and observation, you train your subconscious to recognize patterns instantly. Body language, tone shifts, energetic cues. The more you practice stillness, the more data your mind quietly processes. What feels like gut instinct is actually stored wisdom made accessible through calm. This is why seasoned leaders often say, "I can't explain it, but I know it's time." They've learned to trust perception that arises from stillness, not fear. The way of the strategist. The Taoist strategist doesn't dominate the field. They read it. They move only when movement serves harmony. They withdraw when action would create imbalance. They act decisively, but never hastily. Their secret isn't foresight, it's presence. By fully inhabiting the moment, they see all directions simultaneously. This capacity can be cultivated by anyone: teacher, coach, parent, entrepreneur. It begins with meditation, expands through self-observation, and matures through humility. The more you know yourself, the clearer others become. From reaction to mastery. A reactive person lives on the surface of emotion. A responsive one lives in the depth of awareness. Reaction seeks victory. Response seeks harmony. Meditative training turns every challenge into rehearsal for mastery. Each difficult conversation becomes a chance to test composure. Each misunderstanding becomes an invitation to see more clearly. Through practice, awareness becomes your constant companion. You begin to sense energy shifting before words are spoken. You can anticipate tension before it erupts. You lead, not by pushing, but by positioning. This is true strategy, not chess against others, but alignment with the greater pattern. Closing reflection. Poor strategic awareness isn't a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of presence. When the mind races and emotions flare, vision narrows. But when the breath deepens and awareness widens, the pattern emerges. The philosophical path trains this awareness until it becomes instinct. You learn to see before acting, to understand before deciding, to feel the rhythm beneath the noise. The inner general awakens, calm, compassionate, decisive. You stop fighting people and start aligning with principles. You stop reacting to moments and start reading momentum. This is the third gift of the philosophical path: clarity through perception, leadership through presence, and wisdom through stillness. The strategist within you doesn't conquer the world, they comprehend it. And by comprehending it, they move through it effortlessly.